This video is about softwood lumber, the market, prices, OSB plywood, dimension lumber, construction framing prices in the middle of February 2023, and what is happening on the ground with the forest products manufacturing industry across North America. Hello again, everyone. Kata Kosman, publisher of Madison's Lumber Reporter, here to give you another update of the softwood lumber, panel, plywood OSB prices across North America and what is happening right now in forestry and the industry that serves home building, especially in the US. So here we are, middle of February. We had quite the drop in prices right toward the end of 2022. And as a lot of people noticed, many sawmill curtailments taking downtime during this slowdown. That is not unusual. It's pretty normal for the sawmills to start cutting production toward the end of the year, as there's not as much construction activity going on, during winter as there is, for example, in spring and early summer. There was a bit more curtailment than we've seen in the past couple of years due to the, rather more slowdown in home buying as the mortgage rates increased in the summer of last year, 2022. So there was a significant amount of production taken offline. A lot of the curtailments were here in British Columbia, but there were also all across North America, in the East and in the Pacific Northwest. This brought the drop in the lumber prices to stop. And then now, as the new year is coming on, and the large volume home builders are making their purchases for spring construction, prices are coming back up. There is still less demand than we had at this time of year for the past 2 or 3 years, but really not the very steep slowdown that some people were saying was going to happen because the mortgage rates are increasing. So let's look real quick right now at the first graph, and I'll explain where we are at the moment. So this is that benchmark item, Western Spruce-Pine-Fir KD 2x4 number 2 and better. We call it the benchmark because it's produced and consumed in the highest volume across North America, provides a good indication of potentially what could be happening with other prices that we track across the continent throughout the week and month as customers make their purchases. And so the blue line there is 2023 this year, ticking up as it does generally between January, February and March. Looks like it's low compared to those incredible highs that we had in spring of last year and the previous year, but of course higher than what people had become used to over the 10 years from 2006 to 2017, when it was hovering around $250. And so don't expect to see those lows again, as I said, because cost of production has increased in especially British Columbia, and also don't expect to see these highs. That was a one-time circumstance, a collision of things that happened all at the same time, causing those highs in the prices temporarily. So if you look at the yellow line 2022 last year, trickling down toward the end of the year, as is normal for seasonality, and then coming back up now, we still don't know what's going to happen with that price, but my expectation is the annual cycle somewhere between $500 and $700. Okay, and so now you can see that the price of that benchmark Western Spruce 2x4 is still lower than it was in the past couple of years, even though it's coming back up now as we are in the middle of February, but still higher than the previous 10 years or what was the historical trend. And as I was telling people for all of last year and most of the year before, this is the new normal. This is the new price level to get used to. We're not going to have $250 2x4s on the Western Spruce anymore, because in a very sort of approximation, the cost of production here in British Columbia has risen to about $500 per thousand. And that varies depending, of course, on a lot of things. Let's just use that as a sort of, as a level where the mills, if they sell below that, they're losing money. okay? And what we have right now at the $476 is getting close to that. So in that regard, right now, these manufacturers that I was saying have curtailed and taken production offline are not necessarily announcing restarting quite yet. People are really waiting to see what is happening with the U.S. housing. So this year started off with a bang. I've already been to two conferences, or one conference and one convention. I was a speaker on the keynote panel of the National Association of Home Builders annual convention in Las Vegas, just at the end of January, beginning of February, a couple of weeks ago. And that was enormous. It's a very big convention regardless, but this year broke all records. They had more than 100,000 people. It was kind of insane. So I have the scoop from Robert Dietz, economist of NAHB, who was on this panel with me, to let people know about what's coming up, what is expected by this association for U.S. home building this year. And of course, all we can do is wait for the data to come out as this year's construction season gets started. We're still in some bad weather and winter in a lot of parts of the continent, so not time for that just yet. All in all, production volumes in the past 3 years are lower, have not properly recovered, especially in Canada, from the changes to society and the COVID, the need for social distancing in industrial facilities, especially again in Canada. We're still at a lower manufacturing rate than we were, 2017, 2018, 2019. And not necessarily all of those volumes are able to come back online really very quickly because, as everyone knows, the large volume production facilities here in British Columbia are impacted by the pine beetle, and that has run its course. We now have 15 sawmills closed because the sawmills were built in the parts of the province where timber harvesting had occurred, and that's where the replanting was done. And that's where we made the mistake in the 1980s and the 1950s of planting the monoculture, which made it easy for the pine beetle to just chew through. And there's lots of timber available in British Columbia, even outside and within the merchantable timber basket, just that huge mills, many huge mills were built right there in that area, and that's the mills that have been closed. So just a couple of weeks ago, Canfor, the Houston mill, the flagship mill in Houston, British Columbia, they announced closure. That mill's going to be taken down. It was one of those high volume, 3 lines, 3 shifts. It was supposed to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Really never got that high in the first place, because by the time the mill was completed being built in 05, 06, 07, the U.S. housing, that boom from 04, 05 of the zero interest mortgages had crashed, and the demand was not as high as it had been. So that mill is going to be rebuilt as a smaller, higher value, advanced material, engineered wood mill, and a pellet plant. So consumption of the sawmill residuals will feed directly into Canfor's own wood pellet, and wood pellets is a very important growing industry across North America, not only as a renewable fuel source using the residuals from lumber manufacturing as its feedstock, but to replace the previous buyer of this, which was the pulp mills. So let's look at the next graph and the table, and I'll let you know a little bit more detail of where we are right now. And as the following weeks come up, getting into March, check back here and see more updates as we get into the spring building season, and we'll find out exactly better what's going to happen with the lumber prices this year. And getting into some more detail here, again, that first top line is that Western spruce graph that I showed you earlier at $476, ticking up a little bit since the beginning of this year compared to the previous month. Southern yellow pine on the east side, again up, and Eastern Spruce-Pine-Fir coming out of Quebec and New York State, showing an increase, a little bit of a moderation of that increase over the previous week. And then your studs, Western spruce PET studs showing flat but up from 1 month ago. Green Douglas fir, there was a real issue in the fourth quarter last year as the warehouses strike took a lot of the coastal species out of the marketplace. 5-week work stoppage. Now that's back, so that price spiked and then dropped again as production resumed and material made it out into the marketplace. Finally, Canadian softwood plywood out of Toronto showing flat from the previous week but down from last year. And those same prices presented as a graph showing you how those highs in early 2021 and then again at the beginning of 2022 really make it seem so volatile. I will point out that the attending correction down was as severe, and so those high highs and low lows are getting worked out now into a more stable pricing. Depending on how things go with construction during this year, we'll see if the expectation of the high, the new level of high of $700 will be reached. That might not happen until next year, but like I keep saying, we won't have those lows of around $250 that we saw for so long previous to 2020. And so right now, you see that those lines are ticking up into the middle of February, which is normal as the home builders stock up on the wood that they need for their expected projects coming up in the spring. So whether those prices keep climbing a little bit or level off approximately around where they are right now, we won't know that for the next couple of months until it happens. What I can say is that the curtailments and downtime being taken by the sawmills, taking that production volume offline is what prevented those prices from continuing to drop now. And this is the way that people can think of how it's going to work going forward. Should demand be really soft and prices start to drop again, you will know that more sawmills will be curtailing as that happens. Okay, and so, you know, we've really been through some strange, unusual times in the past 2 or 3 years with some volatility that was never seen before and a string of circumstances that I don't think anyone expects to ever see again, although there will be volatility due to other unforeseen events, specifically with the weather, this being storms, which are more severe and more frequent than they used to be, and also fires, which are also, well, they're more severe. Whether or not more frequent depends sort of on the weather seasonality impacting the timber supply. So the expectation for the longer term future, you know, let's say after this year, 2024, almost all realtors and home builders agree it will be good times. We have a significant amount of pent-up demand for new home buying or home buying in general, especially with the generation of the millennials that are now getting into first-time home buying age. So there's 15 years worth of young people coming on to buying a home for the first time. We have the U.S. having been underbuilt during those 10 years after the housing crash from 2006 to 2017 was below 1 million housing starts annualized per year. So there's not enough homes on the market. It's one of the reasons why, apart from COVID and the changes to society, that rush to buy caused such furor in the past couple of years. And something that a lot of people haven't really realized, the existing housing stock is aging out. There's a lot of homes across North America that are approaching their end of life. So they will either be torn down and rebuilt or need like really serious reinvestment and remodeling. So the demand for wood is definitely there. And Madison's lumber reporter is always here to let you know what's going on. If you like what you see here, click like. You will get notified when there's another video if you actually subscribe here on YouTube. And if you need more information than this small snapshot that I give you on YouTube or put on the website, then fill out a form to get a sample, take out a subscription, have access every week to all 500 individual softwood lumber and panel commodity prices that we track, and the commentary explaining why those prices have changed.